Why don't you just give us a quick introduction on who you are and who you serve?
Sure. So my name's Catherine. I'm a British psychologist. I've been living in Madrid in Spain for 10 years. I, who do I serve? Largely the expat community here in Spain, which is largely people from the US, people from the UK. Um, and largely what I do is acceptance and commitment therapy, which is largely about accepting thoughts and feelings as they are and still living the life that you want. And so with that, I'm also a very geeky person, so I like to involve my interests, get to know my clients' geeky interests, and we use those a lot in therapy, both
Sure.
for getting to know each other better and also as examples in the therapy space.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. I like that. What are some examples, some more specific examples where you can kind of bring on the geek culture into creating that common ground?
So, for example, in the first intake session, one thing I like to do is to ask people what their interests are, what they're into, and lots of the time people say, "Oh, nothing much. I only like watching TV." Okay, perfect. That's an interest. Tell me what kind of TV you like. Tell me what you're into. Or, "Oh, I don't really do much. I don't really hang out with people." Okay, well, do you ever play online? Yeah, I guess I have a gaming group online. That's people. And I
Hmm.
think a large part of what I do is validating that maybe going outside and talking to people as socializing is great, but also being on a computer and talking to people and socializing is also just as valid, which especially we saw after the pandemic, a lot of us used that as our primary means of communication during the lockdowns.
Yeah. Yeah, and I don't think the like society as a whole has really gone back to more in-person stuff because even myself, personally, that was really what shifted my eyes to online. And so now I spend all of my day in my basement. I'm a basement dweller now. But I think a lot of like professions have shifted to remote work online, showing that it works. Like their productivity probably increases a lot of times because they can work kind of on their own schedule. They're not getting interrupted by people saying, "Hey, did you send this email? Did you check? Did you see this? Can I have this? Blah blah blah." And then also there's lower costs because now somebody doesn't have to have the lights on for an entire office building when everyone else at home when everyone is at home, and so there's that separation, and so you kind of need that visual, the virtual connection, like what you and I are doing right now, and online gaming, Discord communities, and all that. So you definitely need it, and like you said, it's very valid, and you shouldn't downplay it because then people will think, oh, it's not even worth it. I won't even do that.
Absolutely, and I think the idea of socializing has changed so much since when we were kids. At least when I was a child, it was, "Oh, go outside and play with a ball with your friends." "Oh, don't be inside. Why do you want to be on the internet the whole time?"
Yeah,
Whereas
yeah,
now it's a very valid thing to say, "Hey, I met people on the internet and I want to chat with them."
yeah.
Great.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure you hear a lot of stories because I know I do of like buddies who have been gaming for like 10 years online and then they
Hmm.
finally meet each other in person for the first time and it's like they've had this 10-year long friendship through online that they never would have had. And I mean, I know people obviously online dating's the whole thing, but just like meeting people through online gaming and creating a relationship around that or through that
Yeah, absolutely.
is a lot.
Yeah, I've been in the same D&D group for 3 years online, and last year was the first time we actually met them in person when everyone flew over for our wedding.
Oh,
And
nice.
that was really nice because otherwise we come from such different walks of life that we probably wouldn't ever have met otherwise.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
having that
exactly.
online community was really important, and those
Hmm.
relationships were, even though we hadn't met each other in person before, just as valid.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. Absolutely. There's a small story. You said, your version of playing when you were a kid is going outside playing with a ball. Tanya and I went for a walk yesterday, and for like over a quarter mile, between like a quarter and a half a mile, which I don't know what that is in un-American speak, but in about quarter of a mile to half a mile, we just kicked a pine cone the entire way home. And we were like kind of joking about this is what they used to do in the 50s and like kicking the can. And it was just like a way to keep our brain occupied while we were walking. Um, and it was just fun. It was like one of those things where you can really appreciate the simplicity of kicking a pine cone down the sidewalk.
Nice.
Yeah, yeah. Cool. So you said expats. I did not actually know that. I know you and I have worked together for a while, but I did not know you work with expats, which I think the expat, as far as I'm concerned, those are expatriates, meaning former Americans or Americans that now live overseas, correct?
Yeah, there's a bit of a debate of whether we should use the term expat or immigrant.
Sure. Either
And
one.
I, yeah, exactly. Like, I tend to go for whatever that person identifies at.
Yeah.
As if someone tells me, "Oh, I've been living in Spain for 10 years as an immigrant." Okay, perfect. Yeah. You've been living here for 5 years as an expat. Okay, perfect. I'm happy with whatever you choose to identify as.
Yeah, yeah, it's probably the pandemic was probably that threshold of people before were probably more like immigrants. Other ones were probably expats where they felt almost pushed out. So like anyone after the pandemic was like, I am not staying here. So they're leaving, which I know is a growing community, I guess, outside of America, just in general.
Hmm.
Yeah, my one buddy, he's a former military. We play D&D together, and he likes traveling. He's been trying to travel overseas more often, and he even said he's thinking about becoming an expat. And it's more like it's doubly important for him, or what, doubly meaningful for him because, like I said, he's former military, so he actually served for American military, and now he's thinking about just not cutting ties, but leaving the country and living elsewhere, because he's not.
That's probably okay.
Yeah, yeah, and he's going. He's actually traveling at the end of September. I think he's going again for a couple of weeks, like 4 weeks. He says he's just gonna fly to Japan, I think, somewhere around there, and then he's like, I'm gonna fly there, and then see where the wind takes me, kind of thing. So he doesn't really have any other big plans. Last year he went for like 6 weeks, and he had like, okay, I'm staying here for 2 weeks, here for a week, here for another week. This time it's just figuring out where the wind takes him.
Amazing. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
I only planned to come to Spain for 6 months, and now it's been 9.5 years.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
long-term plans don't always work out.
Yeah, exactly. And I
That's
think
right, about the journey, not the destination, right? That
yeah,
sounds so therapist cliche, but it's true.
no, 100%, 100%. And when he left last year, I was like, I would have bet money that I would have got a text from him saying, "Hey, I'm not coming back. Go clean out my apartment. You can keep whatever you want." And I would have been like, "All right, man, we'll play D&D online, I guess." But cool. So can you dive into a little bit more about would you say acceptance and what do you say contentment therapy is?
Commitment.
Commitment therapy. Yeah, sorry. Can you dive into that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So, I think most of us have heard of cognitive behavioral therapy, where you're working on changing your thoughts to be more positive, to work well with your emotions, which for a lot of people works great. What I'm curious about is why it doesn't work very well for some people, especially neurodivergent people. And what I've heard some people say is that it felt very invalidating of what their thoughts were, that other people, mainly their therapists, were telling them, no, you're wrong to think that way, you need to think in a more positive way. Oh, but you have all these negative self-beliefs. Well, let's think more positively about them. Okay, to a point I think that's fine, but also I think to a point that can invalidate some of the thoughts you're having, especially for people who aren't neurotypical and who are having different experiences. Or even immigrants, for example, or people of mixed race. I'm part Latina, and I would feel if somebody tried to invalidate my thoughts around my culture, or say, oh, you must think about it in a more positive way, I would feel that wasn't really recognizing myself. So what acceptance and commitment therapy does is it uses fairly similar techniques, but it says, okay, you're having these thoughts. Okay, great. If they're thoughts that are hurting you, then let's take a step back from them rather than try to change them and let them do their own thing, like they're just there in the background. Like I'm noticing that post-it note on the background there. Okay, but I'm not going to let that destroy the podcast. It can just be there doing its thing.
Sure.
And
No,
so it's about learning these techniques at that distance there.
yeah, yeah, and I think a lot of people are quick to either confront or correct people, like what you were saying, where people are like, "Man, I'm not feeling happy," or more like acutely, "I'm feeling like I'm pissed off," and people are like, "Why are you pissed off? You got nothing to be mad about. You have such a great life," or "Why did that person piss you off? Screw them. They don't really, they don't matter." Blah blah blah. Rather than saying, "Look, I totally get what they said could piss you off." Maybe as a friend to friend, you probably wouldn't say, tell me a little bit why you're pissed off, but I know in a more professional setting you could be. But just saying, look, your feelings are validated, and let's talk a little bit about why you're feeling that way. Is that kind of the route that you go?
Yeah, it's not about just saying, oh, you've got these horrible thoughts, okay, that's fine, your life has to continue as it is. Well, no, because obviously I'm feeling really hurt, I'm feeling really down, I'm feeling really anxious. But, okay, let's see what's causing these thoughts. Either sometimes we look into how we can change the thoughts, and sometimes we look into, okay, this is where the thoughts have come from, it's going to be really hard to get rid of those, and that's fine. Let's see what can you do about your life so that you can continue what you want to do, and that's where the commitment part comes in. It's not so much you need to change the thoughts to have a good life, it's how can I have a good life despite what my brain is telling me.
Yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. You're familiar with Dr. K, right? We talked about him quite a bit.
A little.
Yeah. I've been following him. I bought his guide, and so I've been going through his meditation stuff. But I was just watching something. last night with him. He likes to do like 2 hour long interviews with streamers on a stream, so he'll kind of like psychoanalyze them, kind of just going back and forth for learning purposes. But he said that a lot of our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, even as adults, are really rooted in our childhood experiences. So something that happened at like 5 years old that would have happened at like 22 would not have yielded the same results. But since when we're 5, our brains aren't developed enough to really have more complex views of thinking, to where we then create these blanket philosophies, I guess, so to speak, or blanket thoughts, to where like if you're 5 years old and you go to pet a dog and a dog nips at you, you then think at 5 years old all dogs are assholes. But versus like if it happens at like 22, you're like, that dog's an asshole. All other dogs are okay until proven otherwise. And so I know that's kind of an acute example, but if, let's say, you don't have the best home life with your parents and you feel like your parents are abandoning you, then your entire life from there on, you're going to feel like you're the only person you can rely on. There's going to be a sense of abandonment with your relationships all across the board, because eventually it's like, when is the other shoe going to drop? When am I going to be heartbroken? When are they going to leave me? When are they going to abandon me? All because you had a poor relationship with your parents, which, if this happened at 22, that wouldn't translate. But now that your kind of blanket belief is abandonment and you're the only person you can rely on, that translates through everything else.
Yeah, and so much is, like you say, formed by the time we're so young, because that's our only experience. That's the filter in which we're viewing the world. Mm-hmm. Especially, I think, with a lot of my clients with autism, they tell me that about the experiences they've had of childhood bullying because of not fitting in. Like you say, if you're 6 years old and that happens to you, you're more likely to believe, okay, this is how the world works. Whereas if you're 22 and it happens to you, you might have enough experience and knowledge to go, okay, that was one example of things happening to me. Things mm-hmm. don't necessarily have to always be like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it sounds like kind of what you do is kind of walk them down that path, saying, okay, this is kind of where you are now, but let's say these opinions or these thoughts and feelings are validated, but maybe let's explore an alternative route, or let's explore what these actually mean, or where these are rooted from.
Yeah, or find an environment where you're going to feel supported. Like if mm-hmm. you've grown up somewhere, okay, giving myself as an example, when I grew up, it was very strange to see a young girl holding a Game Boy instead of playing with ponies or dolls.
Yeah.
And so that was something I felt I had to hide a lot of when I talked to people. Because, oh, well, people don't want a little girl to play with dolls. Sorry, a little girl to play with her Game Boy. Okay, I won't talk about Game Boy with people. Now, as a 33-year-old, I love talking about Game Boy with anyone. And I found these online spaces where people are happy to talk about them. Mm-hmm. And say, okay, you're female, fantastic. Let's talk more about that. Not to say there isn't a problem with female gamers on the internet sometimes, but
that's a different can of worms.
Where you're validated, where people say, yes, you can come as you are. You don't have to feel that you have to hide that part of yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. I just saw a post the other day. It was, they called it the Game Boy still, but it was like the pink, I think it was the Game Boy Advance, or it might have been the Game Boy Advance SP. And it was like a pink one, and it came in a separate box. And everyone's like, you should have just called it the Game Girl. But it was like specifically targeted towards girls because, like you said, there was that kind of negative stigma. So I think that was their way to kind of bridge that gap. But yeah, no, I remember even...
I would have just refused it on principle anyway.
Yeah, exactly. But no, even myself. So like, I always talk about how I started playing video games at like age like 3. I got my first Game Boy. It was the original, like the original Fat Boy, and I played Pokemon from Pokemon Yellow to now. But there was a time in middle school, like pretty much all of middle school, where I'd only talk about it with my like immediate friends. And even if we were to talk about it like on the school bus, I would like whisper and I'd like, I don't want anyone to hear me because I don't want to seem like a loser. Now I'm like, yeah, I'm a loser. Like I'm embracing that. I built a whole entire business around serving the quote unquote losers, the gamers, the people that don't always felt like they fit in. And now it's like, look, we got this awesome community and we can make some big changes here, like with their health and stuff like that. That's obviously my route. And it sounds like the same thing for you, but the mental health side of things.
Yeah, because it's such an important part of so many people's identities. Why not bring that into therapy? Not that it's something you need to fix. It's a part of you.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a part of my culture. I've got my Latina culture, I've got my British culture, I've got my geek culture, I've got my expat/immigrant culture. Sure, there's tons of others there that I haven't actively thought about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and when you have something like that, and you have that big part of your culture, that's a big part of your identity, and then you try to push it to the side. I don't want people to know that I play the Game Boy, or I don't want people to know that I play Pokemon. That can be very what do I want to say? I don't want to say it can be very unhealthy because you're essentially pushing away or suppressing part of who you are and saying that part of me is not good enough for other people, or that part of me is not good enough for other people to see in public. And so I can see how that can be very demotivating, but also really lowering your value or your self-worth.
Yeah, it definitely brings a lot of shame and a lot of feelings of not being good enough, like you say, a lot of social ostracism, which in some cases has happened.
Yeah.
Where if you try, as a child, bringing up, say, oh, I play Game Boy to your friends, they don't relate, they don't understand, and you're being weird and different and strange.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I think a big part of that, like my shift was, in high school, we moved like right from between end of middle school to high school, which was 8th grade to 9th grade for me. And I was like, you know what, screw it. I am who I am. With the big move, essentially lost all my friends, or at least in the local area. And I was like, I am who I am. So then I started wearing my essentially my feelings on my shirt, like my what I like on my shirt. And I got nothing but compliments, you know what I mean? So like I get compliments for my shirts all the time. And so it's kind of like one of those things where it's like, look, this might not be the coolest thing, but I am who I am. I'm accepting it. I'm wearing it. I'm quite literally on my sleeve. And people, if they don't like it, then they can fuck off. And I think I found that a little bit earlier than a lot of people did, but yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So you said that you're a nerd. You use Geek. So what are some of your interests? What are your geeky interests that you really try to either build a community around, or you really try to build common ground with your clients, patients?
So I'm really into board games. We have quite a big collection.
A little bit of technical difficulties, but we're back at it. So you said you like all sorts of nerdy stuff: D&D, Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, Disney, anime, both child animation for like kids shows and adult shows. You said you recently got into Lord of the Rings, which quite honestly was a huge influence on my life. So what got you into Lord of the Rings? And yeah, let's start there.
So I think I just missed being old enough when the films came out. So the first film, Fellowship of the Ring, came out when I was 10 or 11, I think. And I did try watching it, but it was probably a bit too heavy for me at the time because I fell asleep halfway through. And so that put me off watching it until, it would have been last year, there was a concert in Madrid where they were playing live the music from the films. And my husband said, great, let's go see it. But first you need to watch the films.
Nice. So they were playing the movie with a live orchestra, right?
Yeah, they played the Return of the King. Well,
Okay.
they did the whole trilogy, but we only got tickets for Return of the King.
Nice. Yeah, I think they did that in America too. I can't remember, but I remember hearing that, and I can just imagine that because it has an amazing, soundtrack, and so I can imagine sitting there with a live orchestra would have been amazing.
It was fantastic. I mean, honestly, that's one of the things I love most about series and video games, the soundtracks behind them.
Mm-hmm.
Like Baldur's Gate 3, I usually just have that on loop when I'm doing paperwork.
Nice. Yeah. The funny thing with soundtracks, especially with video games, and to an extent movies, they are made to capture your attention. And so, like, especially video games, they are meant to keep you engaged and keep you engrossed. And so listening to, like, video game scores while studying or trying to do, like, some sort of homework or something you have to focus on for a while can help keep you engaged because that music is essentially designed to do so.
For sure.
Yeah, cool.
And I think it can be really powerful in that sense and also bring out such strong emotions in people.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially like when you get into like the movie scores and stuff like that. I'm not the biggest movie buff, but a lot of times when I listen to music, it's when I need to invoke some form of emotion, normally in the form of lifting heavy weights. And so I'll listen to like really angry music when I need to lift heavy, or when I go for a run. Those are the two main times that I'll really listen to music.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now you're reminding me of, do you know the video game Katawa Shoujo?
No, I've not heard of that.
So it's a visual novel where you're a high schooler in a school for people with disabilities, and it's kind of just your typical story of one guy, 5 girls, choose which one you're going to romance and follow their story.
Mm-hmm.
There's one girl who uses prosthetic legs and she runs on the track team. And not long after I finished her route, I started trying to couch the 5K program to start running, and I would usually have her theme song as my soundtrack to help motivate me.
Oh, nice. That's really cool.
That actually worked really well. Like, I made it through the program and kept up running for a couple of months.
Wow.
Which for me is a lot.
Yeah. No, I mean, 5K for most people is a pretty good accomplishment, and so it's a good milestone to hit, I think. And they have a lot of like Couch to 5K programs and like apps and stuff. I did. There's one called Zombies Run. Have you heard of that app?
Oh yeah. I've heard of them.
Yeah, they have a Couch to 5K specific app specifically for that, and I did that about half of it, and I enjoyed it. I didn't do the full 5K, but it was cool because it like creates a narrative. Like you're actually running, you're involved in a story, and I think a lot of us gamers like being involved in some form of narrative.
Yeah. Well, when you're playing Katao Shoujo, at one point your character is trying to train and she comes along and encourages you. And when I was thinking, oh gosh, this is far too much, I can't keep running, I just want to stop, then she'd just pop into my mind saying, come on, you can still do it. It's like, fine, I'm not going to let down the fictional character.
Exactly. Hey, whatever works, whatever motivates you, right?
Yeah, I can't see why fictional characters shouldn't be role models at all.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. So you said you also recently got into D&D, right? Or you recently started trying to run a game.
Uh, yeah, so I started playing, when did I start playing? About 5 years ago, I would say I started, although it was something I always really wanted to do when I was a kid, when I saw it portrayed on TV, but it was always portrayed as, oh, there are the geeks over there doing the weird dragons thingy. Not like us, let's tease them. So I thought, wow, it looks really cool. Oh, that's a thing I shouldn't do? Oh, okay.
Yeah. No.
So now as an adult, finally got into it, and yeah, absolutely loving it. I'm in a campaign at the moment that my husband is running that is with the group where they all came over to our wedding.
Oh, cool.
And I
Nice.
tried running a short campaign for my husband, which at the end I proposed to him with that, so that was fun.
That's
Little
awesome.
love story.
For sure. Can you dive into that a little bit more? I want to hear how that story went.
So I thought, we agreed that we would propose to each other in some ways, and so I thought, okay, well, he's really into D&D, so maybe I'll make a D&D campaign. Maybe I'll try and make my character fall in love with his, or vice versa, and it wasn't really working after a couple of scenarios. So I asked on Reddit, who are kind of a mix of good and not good advice. But this time the D&D community were really helpful, and they said, oh, why don't you try this, why don't you try that? So in the end we had a session where his party had to go and find a magical object to restore the voice to an NPC, and then the NPC, when she got her voice back, was finally able to tell her true love something she'd wanted to tell him.
Nice. I like that. That's cool. I was gonna say something about D&D. Oh, when I had a very similar experience. Like when I was high school ish, I was a nerd, right? Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, like you said, all of that. But there were two kind of forbidden arts, if you will, Magic the Gathering and D&D. And I come to find out I designed again my program around my business around those two those two games, D&D and Magic. And so those are like the epitome of nerd culture. And so when I actually did start playing them, I'm like, oh, I was like, this is what I've been missing like my whole life. And I was like, this is I just need more of it. And so for better or for worse, it was a good experience again. But then there were some cons to it, some drawbacks. But yeah, great games overall.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot about therapeutic video games in terms of they are designed for therapy, but I think video games in themselves can be extremely therapeutic just because of the stories that they tell or the music they have.
Yeah, absolutely. And you were diving into potentially creating your own therapy-based video game, correct?
Yeah, I'm kind of just fiddling about with the basics of RPG Maker at the moment, but I do like the idea of making a video game where you can practice to an extent some of the concepts of ACT. So very much watch this space.
Okay. Is that kind of like Dr. Scarlett's? She's got like a choose your own adventure fantasy therapy style book, right? And you were trying to turn that into like
Yeah, I
a
love
game?
that book so much. Yeah, I'd like to do something like similar along those lines, along that kind of concept. I think there's such power of not just following a self-help book with other people's examples, but by putting yourself in the story, it increases that interaction, it increases that engagement.
Yeah, because it increases that immersion, right?
Exactly. You are that character, or at least you're identifying with that character, and their adventure is your adventure. I'm not just Catherine sitting in a chair reading a book. I am going through this magical forest, or what have you.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't know if you watched one of our earlier I think it was my first podcast with Mark. He also is a licensed mental health counselor, and he's got the idea, same with also Dr. Sanchez, who I know you know, about doing a mental health style D&D campaign, or maybe like a one shot, to where we each of us players kind of adopt some form of I don't want to say disability, but like mental health drawback. And so for me, it would be like, as coming from like the physical side of things, it'd be like the fear of failure, to where I wouldn't want to cast that spell out of fear of it being the wrong time to cast it, or I wouldn't want to take action out of fear of me failing that action. And so just really pulling myself back out of fear of failure. And then we would run the one shot, doing these with having these essentially drawbacks. And then we would also do like a second one shot where we kind of analyze the characters that we were playing and figuring out like where the growth could come from, or maybe even as the campaign or as the one shot goes, show signs of growth and stuff like that. So it's an idea we've been brainstorming, and I'm all about it. Yeah. Yeah. So it's very similar to what, or very on par with what you were saying about, you are this character, you are playing this game, and you are trying to essentially adopt these practices to improve yourself that you could very much use in real life, right?
Yeah, and I think by being able to do it in a game environment, it has no consequences if you do it wrong. One of the things I loved about visual novels, which I got into as a teenager, was that it offered different dialogue options, and it would show what happened if you said each one, which, as a teenager with not very good social skills, for me was fantastic.
Yeah.
Was, okay, I've chosen the wrong option. Oh, okay, that's what happens if I say that. All right, let's try saying something different next time.
Yeah.
But it doesn't matter if you get it wrong in a game. In real life, okay, it might have consequences in terms of your social interactions or how well people are talking with you. But in the game, it doesn't matter. You can use it as your own playground, your own gym.
Yeah.
I
Exactly.
Session brain gym with some of my clients.
Nice. What was
Because
that?
if it goes wrong, fine, then we talk about why something went wrong and how can we try better next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Try
Oh,
a better approach.
absolutely.
That's all about.
Absolutely. And that's good. And that's a good place that like you can have a healthy outlet for that, to where they can kind of explore more narrative options. Cool. Cool. I was going to ask about, oh, can you tell me a little bit more about the game that you're making? I know we kind of glossed over that, but I want to hear a little bit more about if you have like the skeleton of it kind of framed out.
It's not as such. I'm still thinking on what exactly do I want the story to be, what kind of character do I want it to be, or do I want to make it make your own character. But I am very new to game making, so I'm still at the point of learn how to put a main character in this style.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
So very much a summer project.
Hey, it's all right. It's all right. I was talking to another client. I have another client who actually is like, his dream is to become a game developer, and he wants to quit his job to be able to sustain himself through game development. And he's starting to do like more like the tutorial stuff, very much like what you were talking about. And I was talking to him about this guy named Thor from Pirate Software, and he does a lot of he does a lot of content creation around creating video games. And he says like the biggest piece of advice, which is very on par with what I say, is embrace the imperfect action, embrace the suck, because the first game you make is not going to be your big AAA title. It's not going to be your big ticket money maker. So it's probably going to suck. But then the second game is going to be better because you learned. And then the third game is going to be better than the second. And so he's like, you just got to get rolling and get the ball going. And he does a 2-week challenge I think he calls it a hackathon, where they have 2 weeks to make a video game. It's like, it's going to suck, but you're making a video game based on this particular thing.
I did that a few years ago, and I think it's such a fantastic idea because, like you say, you get something out there. Okay, maybe it's not beautiful and polished. Okay, but I learned a lot from it, and like you say, you can do that again next time. Yeah,
absolutely. And then you rush for 2 weeks, and you learn so many skills because you're not worrying about failure, you're just worrying about completing it. And then you can use those tools and to do it again and do it again and do it again. And it's very much like, fitness, to tie it back, because I know you and I are working together. It's your first goal isn't to run a 5K. It's to get out and go for a walk, whether it's a 10-minute walk or whatever it is. It's to get out and go move, and then you build those steps to eventually run 5K, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And it's quite similar in act. It's not about doing as many things as you can perfectly. It's about, okay, go out and do the thing.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I want to shift gears a little bit, because I know you and I are working together on a coach-client relationship. And so I'd like to hear a little bit about, if you want to share maybe one struggle that you had that you kind of overcome, or that you're working on overcoming, and then maybe like a victory that you and I have had together.
Yeah, sure. So this is something I notice a lot in my clients, and so when you pointed it out, I thought, oh, wait, I'm doing that as well. So for a while I've had this goal of get below a certain goal weight number, which I finally did this week. Mm-hmm. And then I find myself coming up with excuses as to, well, yeah, but it's not a big deal because these are all these extenuating factors, and you're pointing out, Catherine, that is a big deal. I thought, wow, I'm doing that with my clients all the time where they say, okay, yeah, I did it, but it wasn't real because this and that and all these excuses. And I say, come on, you did the thing. Acknowledge that you did the thing.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that was
I think that's something our brain likes to tell us, oh yeah, but just discount all the positive stuff. It wasn't that big.
yeah, just I think there's an imposter syndrome at play there, and it's the waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like, okay, when's the rug gonna get pulled out from under me? When am I gonna really see that this victory was a false victory, et cetera, et cetera? And so if you keep those expectations low, then you keep saying to yourself, oh, it wasn't a real victory anyway. So the fact that I lost it, it doesn't really mean that much. It doesn't really matter. When in reality, that's obviously a mindset you and I have been working on for 6 months now, 5 months now, about 6 months, 6 months, yeah.
Yeah, I thought it just after New Year.
Yep.
New Year, new me, and all that.
Exactly. Which I will say, you have been absolutely dominating your New Year's resolutions for over 6 months, which vast majority of people can't say. So you've been doing a fantastic job. I know we had a couple setbacks with family vacations and stuff, but you've been jumped right back on it, and your progress has been essentially borderline linear with the exceptions of those 2 family trips that you had.
Nice. And hey, that's life, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Sometimes life is going to throw you.
Yeah, and you can kind of attest to this, but a big part of what I do isn't like a lot of coaches will say, okay, weeks 1 and 2 we're going to do this, and then we're going to ramp it up for weeks 2 through 4, and then weeks 4 through 6 we're going to do this, that, or the other, and they create a linear program because they expect a linear progression, but that is not how the body works. That is not how life works, and so you're familiar with SMART goals, right? Specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and timely, I believe. I'm not a big fan of those because let's say I want to lose 50 pounds in a year, which is roughly 1 pound a week. That seems realistic, right? And a goal that far out you could probably do, but something shorter like 15 pounds in 12 weeks is also realistic. But what happens in America, the 4th of July is coming up in a month, and then this is summer, so we got summer vacations, we got, we're camping, and so you might have a realistic goal, but you're not, you're not putting in life into account, right? And so job change, all these super crazy things to where, yes, I had a reasonable, achievable goal, but life said, fuck that, no. And so you are getting a wrench thrown into things and you can't reach these achievable goals, and so then you feel demotivated, throw your hands up in the air and say, it's not in the cards. So with you, we have been just kind of taking what life throws at us and going with it, making adjustments, moving forward, pumping the brakes, and still seeing progress. And then not to go too deep into it, but like when you went on your couple family trips, we actually pumped the brakes, increased your caloric intake so that way you could survive a little bit of extra stress. And then when we came home, kind of hit the gas again or got back into it, rather than just trying to hammer it all the way through and then have everything fall apart, which is what a lot of people do. And I think you said that's happened prior to us working together.
Failure when I've had a setback. It's more, okay, this is just part of life. Okay, let's just keep back on it now that I'm back in a better position because the family trip or vacation has ended, like you say.
Yeah, exactly. I like to say there's no failure, just feedback. And so kind of use that. There's a small setback, and we'll kind of progress moving forward. Cool. So a question I have for you is, and I ask this to everybody, if you could create a character sheet for yourself, what class would you be?
Good question. I feel when I've asked other therapists a similar question, everyone's always said paladin, because we like to feel that they're strong, defending people, helping people. Was the question what I would want to be or what I would be? So those are 2 quite different things, I would feel.
What do you feel like you would be? Like what do you closely identify as?
Good question. I like the idea that I would, I don't know, maybe a paladin or maybe a monk who is there to clear the way so that other people can follow behind and see the options ahead of them. So I'll be the person at the front with the lantern and you tell me which way to go. So maybe not necessarily one who's got the most, I'll say high intelligence but low wisdom, in terms of I'm not going to be making the decisions. I'm going to show you which decisions you can make and you choose from there.
Okay, nice. I think that could go either way. Monk, to kind of like you said, kind of show them the way, but also the paladin as well. Paladin would be more like you want to smack around a few enemies while doing it.
I mean, don't get me wrong, I would love to just go to all the problems that are in my client's way and just smash them out of the way for them, that would be amazing. But realistically, can't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I felt the same way.
Train them to be the paladin, and they can fight their problems.
Yeah.
Or they can wisely decide when to move away and to find a different route.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I feel the same way. I feel like I would be a paladin mostly because of like the strength charisma aspect. But like you said, paladins, there's that sense of devotion, and I think for you it'd be devotion to your patients and clients, myself included. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, can I be the teacher of the paladins?
Yeah, exactly. You could be. You could be, right? You're gonna be a. I like to say I'm Phil to Hercules, to where I'm there and we're doing the training montage to get you to break through the measuring tape. Cool, cool, cool.
Great film.
Yeah, it is. I really like. It's one of my favorite Disney films. I actually have a Hercules. It's actually Zeus, but from the plate from the movie Hercules, and it's Zeus. It's I think it was a McDonald's toy when it came out. I was 4 when it came out, and so I've had that plate ever since.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know. I could choose my best Disney film. Tough question.
yeah. I mean, that one's probably mine. Next is Lion King. I think those are close, first and second.
Lion King's definitely up there. I think if I had to choose which one's been the most impactful on me, I would say Moana, probably, because it's got such a good message of you can, spoilers for Moana, you can give up if you want to and go home, and that's fine, and you'll be loved and accepted anyway, but is this really what you want to do?
Yeah,
And that helped me a lot when I was doing my master's program, which had a lot of ups and downs, a lot of challenges, and I thought, why am I doing all this? I should just quit and go back to, I was working as an aide in a primary school before I started my master's, and I thought, I should just go back to doing that. And then I watched Moana and I thought, no, I'm doing this because I want to, isn't it? It's not because I have to do it. It's not because someone's telling me to do it. I'm doing this because I want to.
yeah.
Okay, fine. Tell me in Moana. Get on with it.
Exactly. Once you can kind of break that mold or break that mindset of I have to do something, and instead say either I get to or I want to do something, in pretty much anything you do in life, that really helps. And I know I talk a lot about it with exercise, because a lot of times there's a mindset shift with my clients to where they wake up and they say either they had maybe they had a crazy busy day at work, and they're like, man, only thing I could think about was I can't wait to get home and work out. And then they say I get to work out versus I have to work out. So then it becomes less of an obligation and more of a reward to be able to do stuff. And that mindset shift alone is a massive victory. And it's, if somebody can get to that point, or / when they get to that point, it really makes things a lot easier, because now they're looking forward to it like they would be, like somebody looks forward to playing video games, but it's just kind of like another part of the day, you know?
It's awesome.
Yeah. Cool. So I know, again, you and I have been kind of communicating and working together in the past, that I know social media is not your forte, but why don't you give us a quick breakdown on how we can get a hold of you, or how we can follow you if needed.
Yeah, so at the moment I'm just on Facebook with my own personal account, but my website is www.madridmentalwellbeing.com, and hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I will commit to in the next couple of weeks making an Instagram to that effect.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll have the website in the notes, in the description for the video, but I also know that you and I are working together Monday to kind of boost that social media presence. Cool. And actually by that time I might post your Instagram handle as well, because this video won't be out for a couple weeks. Cool. Well, awesome. I appreciate you hopping on, and yeah, I guess until next time.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no problem. No problem at all.